You're going to sign over 15% of this place to your brother tonight. Before close, my father said it the way other people say pass the salt. He was sitting at table 7, my best table, the one by the window with the view of the Nashville skyline, without a reservation, without a phone call, without so much as a knock on the front door. He had a glass of my house Cabernet in front of him that he hadn't paid for. My mother was beside him, scrolling through her phone with reading glasses perched on the end of her nose, already bored with the conversation before it started. My brother Kevin was in the chair across from them, leaning back with his arms crossed like he owned the place. He didn't. I did. My floor manager, Sandra, found me in the kitchen 20 minutes before the dinner rush. She was holding her clipboard to her chest and looking at me the way people look at someone who just stepped into traffic. "There's a family at 7, she said carefully. "They said they didn't need a reservation. That you'd understand." I understood. I hadn't spoken to any of them in 4 years. I took off my apron, folded it over the stainless steel counter, and walked out through the kitchen doors into the dining room. The restaurant was beginning to fill, the low lighting warm, the smell of rosemary and charred oak moving through the air. The soft sound of the playlist I had curated myself filtering through the speakers. I had built every detail of this place from scratch, the reclaimed wood on the walls, the locally sourced menu, the name etched in brass above the door. Claire's, my name, my place. My father looked up when he saw me and smiled like no time had passed at all. "There she is," he said. "Look how well you clean up." I stopped at the edge of the table. I didn't sit down. I needed the height, the small advantage of being the only one standing. "You need to leave," I said. "I have a full house in 20 minutes. We're not going anywhere." My mother didn't look up from her phone. "We came a long way, Claire. The least you can do is hear us out. You came from Chattanooga. It's a 2-hour drive. Don't be smart." She set the phone down. Finally folded her hands on the table. She looked older. They both did. "Your brother needs your help. That's all this is." Kevin looked at me then, and for 1/2 second I saw something real move across his face. Not shame exactly, more like the shadow of it. Then it passed, and he was back to the crossed arms and the lean. "Nice place," he said. "Bigger than I expected. Get out." 15%, my father repeated. He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and produced a folded piece of paper, sliding it across the table without standing up. "We had a lawyer draw it up. It's clean. You sign tonight. Kevin gets a silent partnership stake and we're done. No drama. I didn't touch the paper. You had a lawyer draw up a document giving my brother a stake in my business. And then you drove 2 hours and showed up unannounced to have me sign it tonight. We knew you wouldn't take our calls. There's a reason for that." My father set his wine glass down. His tone didn't change, not exactly, but something underneath it did. "You want to make this difficult, fine. I know who holds your commercial lease on this building. Frank DeLuca. He and I go back a long way. One phone call, and I can make things very uncomfortable for you here." He said it the way he said everything, like a man who had never once considered that he might not get what he wanted. "I want you to think carefully about what you're about to do." I looked at him for a long moment. I kept my face still. "Claire." My mother's voice shifted into the register she used when she wanted to sound like the reasonable one. "Patient. A little sad. Your brother made some mistakes. He's trying to get back on his feet. You have this." She gestured at the room, the vaulted ceiling, the gleaming bar, the wait staff in their neat black aprons. "You have all of this and he has nothing. Does that feel right to you? Does that feel like family?" The word landed the way they intended it to, like a small stone against glass, testing for cracks. I looked at my father. I looked at my mother. I looked at Kevin, who was still looking at the table. "Give me until end of service," I said. 10 o'clock. "I'll come back to this table and we'll talk." My father leaned back, satisfied. He picked up the wine glass again. "That's all we're asking." I walked back to the kitchen. Before I did anything else, I texted one person. "They're here. Table 7. Need you." 3 dots appeared immediately. "On my way. Don't sign anything." I did not panic. I want to be clear about that, because what happened next required me to be very calm. And I was. They had been calling for weeks before this. I had a feeling it was only a matter of time before they made the drive down. I had spent years knowing this moment was coming, not this specific table, not this Monday, but the shape of it. The return, the hands out. I had been ready for the shape of it for a long time. I had a full dinner service to run. I ran it. I want to go back a little, because I think it matters. I grew up in a house where money was always a conversation that happened in a different room. Not poor exactly, but not careful either. There was always a quiet hum of something not quite right underneath everything. A bill paid a week late. A phone call my mother took in the bedroom with the door closed. Kevin was 3 years older and the family organized itself around him. When Kevin wanted something, the household rearranged to make room for it. When Kevin had a bad day, dinner was quieter. I was the other one. Not invisible, but unworried about. I got good grades without being asked. I didn't cause problems. And in my family, not causing problems meant you didn't require attention. I told myself that was fine. Right up until I was 22 years old, sitting at a desk in a studio apartment at 11 o'clock at night, going through my credit report for the first time because I had applied for a small business loan and been denied. That was when I found it. A debt in my name, taken out when I was 19, $38,000. The date was a Thursday in September, 3 years earlier. I had been a freshman in college. And somewhere across the city, someone had used my social security number to borrow $38,000. I sat very still for a long time. I remember the window was open. I could hear the street outside. I found the address on the loan application and recognized it immediately because it was the house I grew up in. The signature was my father's. The name it was signed on behalf of was mine. I called home the next morning. He said things had been tight that year. That Kevin's first business had needed capital. That they had intended to pay it back, but it had gotten away from them. That I had been living under their roof for 18 years, and this was just what family did. That he was disappointed, I couldn't see that. I didn't say anything. I had a notebook in front of me with a 5-year plan for a restaurant, and I was looking at a number that would need to come off my credit report before any bank would take me seriously. I paid it off over the next 2 years. Extra shifts, everything saved. I got the loan removed and rebuilt my score from the ground up. I kept every record. The credit report, the payoff receipts, the bank statements. All of it in a folder I had carried through 3 apartments and 1 restaurant lease. I never told them it was paid off. I let it sit between us, this thing they had done that they thought I had somehow accepted. I stopped calling for a while, and a while became 4 years of silence, and then it became a Monday night in October with 3 people at my best table. They didn't know what I knew. That was the important part. I want to tell you about Claire's because it matters too. I had started cooking professionally at 20, working my way through 4 kitchens in 2 years. How to hold a knife, how to build a sauce, how to read a room. It was at that last place that a regular named Margaret had come out one slow night to tell me something was wrong with my mushroom risotto. Not a complaint, a correction. The stock needed more time. She was right. We talked for 20 minutes. She found out I was saving money, that I had notebooks full of plans, that I was the first in my family to finish a 4-year degree while working 30 hours a week. She gave me her card. Real estate and business attorney. She told me to call when I had a plan worth looking at. She had also, once upon a time, been my family's next-door neighbor. She knew all of them. That would be relevant. I called her 8 months later. She circled 6 things in red ink on my first business plan and handed it back without a word of discouragement. That was the thing about Margaret. She never discouraged. She corrected. There is a difference, and it mattered enormously to me. I had spent most of my life being either overlooked or underestimated. It took 4 more years to get the financing together. I found a former hardware store on East Main Street with high ceilings, original brick, and afternoon light that came through the west windows like something from a painting. I negotiated the lease with Margaret on the phone in my earpiece. I designed the renovation on a tight budget. The right wood, the right fixtures, things that looked like intention rather than compromise. The name was the easiest decision I ever made. Claire's, one word, mine. I opened 6 years ago, at 26 years old and terrified in the way you are when you have put everything into a single thing. We were half full on opening night, and I stood in the back watching people eat food I had designed in a room I had built, and I felt something I didn't have a word for at the time. I had one now. It was called being exactly where you were supposed to be. We won the Nashville Scene's Best New Restaurant that first year, won it again the second year. None of them called. Not when I got the lease, not when I opened, not for either award. That was the last thing I thought about before Margaret arrived. Margaret got there at 9:15, just as the dinner rush was thinning. She came through the back, the way I had told her to. We sat in my office, a small room off the kitchen that smelled like coffee and printer paper, and I told her everything. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment, turning her coffee cup slowly in her hands. "The loan," she said. "The one in your name. Do you have documentation? Everything. The original credit report, the payoff receipts, the bank records. They don't know you know. No. And your father just threatened to contact your landlord, Frank DeLuca." "Yes. Frank and I have lunch every second Wednesday." She set the cup down. "You don't need to worry about Frank." She was quiet for another moment. "Here's what I want you to think about, Claire. You can call the police right now. Trespassing, extortion. That threat about your landlord crosses a line. I can have them removed in 20 minutes. I know. But if I do that, they walk out. Kevin gets in a car and drives back to Chattanooga and the loan disappears. The fraud disappears." I stopped. I pressed my fingers flat on the desk. "I want everything on the table." Something shifted in her expression. Not a smile exactly, more like the recognition of something she understood. "Tell me what you're thinking," she said. I told her. It took about 4 minutes. When I finished, she was quiet again. Then she opened her laptop. "I'll need an hour," she said, "and I'm going to need to make one phone call about his assets. Keep them at the table." I went back out to the dining room and asked Sandra to bring a fresh bottle of wine to table 7 and a cheese plate. She looked at me carefully. "Are you okay?" she said. "I'm excellent," I said. "Hospitality is theater." When I approached table 7, my mother looked up with the carefully neutral expression of someone who has been waiting and does not want to appear impatient. My father had his phone out. Kevin was on his second glass. I sat down. "I appreciate you waiting," I said. The word appreciate cost me something, but I paid it. "I want to hear about Kevin." My father put his phone away. He invested in a property development deal in Atlanta. The partner turned out to be a fraud. Kevin lost everything he had put in. Plus, the investors are coming after him personally. The number they're looking at is somewhere around 220,000. 220,000. He needs a stake in something real, something with cash flow. The 15% gives him collateral. It shows the investors he has assets. It buys him time to negotiate. And if the investors come after the stake, if they put a lien on my restaurant, my father waved a hand. "That won't happen. You don't know that." "Claire." My mother reached across the table and put her hand over mine. The gesture was so practiced, so perfectly calibrated that I almost admired it. "We know we haven't been perfect. We know there's been distance. But you are the only one in this family who has what it takes to fix this. Kevin doesn't have your discipline. He never did. You were always the strong one. The one who didn't need anyone." She paused. "We counted on that, maybe more than we should have. But right now your brother needs you to be strong one more time." It was a good speech. It reframed their neglect as evidence of my capability. It transformed 4 years of silence into a compliment. The specific twisted arithmetic of people who have never once considered that their accounting might be wrong. I nodded slowly. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course. When I was 19, the money, do you know what I'm talking about? A flicker. Too fast for Kevin to catch. But I had been watching my father's face for 28 years. I saw it. I don't know what you mean. The loan. The one someone took out in my name. $38,000. The one I spent 2 years of my life paying off. I kept my voice even. Conversational. The way you talk about something that happened to someone else. I'm not angry about it. I just need to know if we're being honest right now. The table was very quiet. That was a mistake, my mother said. Her voice had changed. Thinner now. We were going to pay it back. But you didn't. We intended to. And when I found it, when I called you that first time, and you told me it was my responsibility because I had been living under your roof and eating your food, and that this was just what family does. I stopped. I took a breath. I've thought about that conversation a lot, about that specific math, that I owed you for existing. Kevin hadn't moved. He was staring at the table. I noticed for the first time that he looked tired. Not the manufactured ease of someone performing confidence. Actually tired. Like someone carrying something heavy who wasn't sure how to put it down. I'm not bringing this up to fight, I said. I'm bringing it up because I want us to be honest with each other. If I'm going to help Kevin, I need everything on the table. My father cleared his throat. Fine. The loan was a mistake. We handled it badly. But that was a long time ago. Claire, you've clearly done well for yourself. You've moved past it. I agreed. I just wanted to say it out loud. I stood. Let me get the paperwork from my office. I want to go over a few things before I sign anything. Margaret was at my desk. 2 documents in front of her, a legal pad covered in notes. She looked up when I came in. How are they? Comfortable. The wine helped. Is it ready? It's better than ready. She slid the top document toward me. The structure is this. You're not signing over equity. You're offering Kevin a business loan secured against his personal assets, framed as a partnership investment for the purposes of showing his creditors collateral. It's legal, it's clean. But the asset guarantee is real and enforceable. If his creditors come after the stake, there's no stake. There's a loan note. And the note pulls his personal assets before it touches yours. And the recording, completely legal in Tennessee. One-party consent. You're the party. She tapped the second document. I need your father to explain the original loan on the record, not because we're going after him tonight. Because if this ever ends up in front of a judge, I want a foundation. He's 3 glasses in. He thinks he's getting what he wants. He doesn't think you're recording. She looked at me steadily. Claire, you can still call the police and end this tonight. I know. You understand that what you're doing instead is harder. I know that too. She was quiet for a moment. Then, what you're doing is not unfair. It is precise. And precision is sometimes the most merciful thing available. She handed me the folder. Go finish it. I fixed my hair in the small mirror on the back of the office door. I let my shoulders drop a little. I practiced the expression I needed. Not defeated, not angry, just tired. The look of someone who has been fighting for a long time and has finally, reluctantly, decided it's easier to stop. When I came back to table 7, I set the folder on the table and sat down. I've been thinking about what you said. I looked at my mother. About being the strong one. I let a pause sit there. You're right that I've always handled things myself. Maybe that made it easy for everyone to assume I didn't need anything. I don't want to be that person anymore. I don't want to be the one who handles it alone. My mother's expression shifted. Wariness replaced by something that looked almost like warmth. That was the thing about giving people what they expected. It disarmed them completely. So I'll help Kevin. But I need to do it correctly, for my own liability, for the restaurant. I have to record this conversation. Tennessee law requires documentation for any business transaction over $15,000 where a verbal agreement is made prior to signing. It's just a formality for my accountant. I set my phone on the table, propped against the small candle at the center. I pressed record. I need you to state that this transaction is a secured business loan from Claire's LLC to Kevin. I paused. What's Kevin's legal entity right now? Do you have an LLC? Kevin shifted in his seat. It's just me. Personal, okay. So this is a personal loan secured against Kevin's personal assets. I need you to state that for the record so my accountant can categorize it correctly. It keeps it off my personal tax return and books it as a business expense. Otherwise, I'm looking at a 40% tax hit. My father's eyes moved to the phone, then to me, then back to the folder. I could see him doing the math, or what he thought was the math. He saw a daughter covering her bases. He saw paperwork. He did not see a trap. Fine. He straightened in his chair with the unconscious dignity of a man who believes he is running the room. I, Robert Calloway, am authorizing this transaction between my daughter's company and my son, Kevin Calloway. The purpose is to satisfy Kevin's personal debt to his investors while providing collateral for further negotiation. Kevin has no liquid assets at this time to cover the obligation himself. Good. And just so my accountant has the full picture, I kept my voice light. She's going to look at the full history of financial interactions between me and the family. It helps her establish that this is the first formal transaction, not part of a pattern of gifts. So I need to mention, just for the record, that there was a prior incident involving a loan taken in my name when I was 19. Just so it's documented as a separate event. The table was quiet. You want me to mention that on a recording? My father said slowly. It helps me, actually. It shows the prior transaction was informal and unilateral, which means this one, by contrast, is structured and consensual. It protects the restaurant from any appearance of family financial entanglement. I looked at him steadily. It actually works in your favor. It makes the old thing go away officially. He believed it. I watched him believe it. The moment the resistance fell away, and he decided the easy path was the honest one. There was a loan taken in Claire's name approximately 13 years ago. He looked into the camera of my phone. Approximately $38,000. It was used for family purposes. It was handled informally at the time. He cleared his throat. This current transaction is separate and distinct from that. Perfect, I said quietly. Thank you. I slid the document across the table. 11 pages, dense, real, sign on the flagged lines. Kevin on the borrower line, you and Mom as guarantors. Kevin picked up the pen. He looked at the page. And for a moment, just a moment, something crossed his face. A hesitation. What does this clause mean? He pointed to a line near the bottom of page 8. Asset guarantee, I said. Standard for secured loans. It means that if you default, my company has a claim on your assets before any other unsecured creditor. It's just how the bank requires it to be structured. We're not a bank. I know. But I have to follow the same documentation standards or my investors get nervous. I paused. Kevin, if you pay this back, which you will, none of it matters. The clause never gets triggered. It's protective paperwork. That's all. He looked at me for a long moment. I held his eyes and let mine be soft, tired, a little sad, the look of a sister who has been worn down to something gentle. He signed. My father signed without reading it at all. My mother signed after looking at the signature lines and nowhere else. The pen was still in my mother's hand when my phone buzzed on the table. One message from Margaret. Transaction complete. Asset search done. He has a house in Brentwood. Equity positive. I picked up my phone. I stopped the recording. I need to tell you something, I said. My father looked up. The money I was going to wire to Kevin's investors. I wired it earlier this week, but not to them. I set my phone face up on the table so they could see the screen. I bought the debt note. I paid his investors 60 cents on the dollar. They were happy to take it. Kevin was already a default risk and they wanted out. Silence. What does that mean? Kevin said. His voice had gone flat. It means I'm his creditor now. The $220,000 is still owed. It's just owed to me. The document you just signed confirms that the loan is a personal obligation, secured against your assets, with no liquid means to satisfy it. I turned to my father. And you just confirmed on a recorded conversation that you previously took a loan in my name without my consent. That is fraud. I'm not going to the police with that recording. Not tonight. But I'm going to keep it. My father's face had gone very still. You can't do this, my mother said. Her voice cracked for the first time. Claire, you can't. This is your family. Kevin. I turned to my brother. The anger I expected to feel wasn't there. What was there instead was something quieter and more permanent, like a door that had been closed for a long time and finally, simply, locked. I spent 2 years of my life paying off a debt I didn't take out. I rebuilt my credit from nothing. I built this restaurant without a single dollar from any of you, without a phone call, without a cosigner, without anyone in this family showing up once. Not once. Not when I got the lease. Not when I opened. Not when I won the Nashville Scene's Best New Restaurant 2 years running. I stopped. I would have helped you. If you had just called me, if any of you had just called me like a person and asked. Kevin didn't say anything. He was looking at the table. I noticed that his jaw was tight. I noticed that he was not going to cry, but that it was a close thing. The asset guarantee gives me a legal claim on your house. I'm not going to foreclose on it. I'm going to have Margaret file a lien, which will prevent you from selling or refinancing without satisfying the note first. You'll make payments on a schedule she'll send you. 3% interest. It's less than you'd get anywhere else. This is extortion, my father said. His voice had changed. The ease was gone. What was underneath it was something harder and smaller, the residue of a man who has always believed that confidence and authority were the same thing and is only now discovering they aren't. It's a legal business transaction that you agreed to and signed. I stood. I picked up the folder. I'm going to ask you to leave now. Sandra will bring the check for the wine and the cheese. We drove 2 hours. There's a Marriott on the highway. Margaret can recommend a good one. I pressed the small button under the edge of the table. The same silent alarm I'd had installed when I opened. The one connected to the Nashville PD non-emergency line. They would send someone to the door in 10 minutes. Just enough time for everyone to understand the conversation was over. I leaned toward my father. Just enough so that only he could hear me. You just confessed on a recording to taking a fraudulent loan in my name. I have been carrying that for 13 years. I want you to understand that I'm not doing this to punish you. I'm doing this because I am done being the only one in this family who pays for things. I straightened up and walked back toward the kitchen. Sandra caught my eye near the bar. I gave her a small nod. She turned toward table 7 with 2 menus pressed flat against her chest, and I pushed through the kitchen doors into the warmth and the noise and the smell of my restaurant. Margaret was waiting in the office. She looked up when I came in. It's done, I said. She held out her hand for the folder. She opened it, checked the signatures, checked the pages in order, and set it on the desk. Then she looked at me. How do you feel? I thought about it honestly. Like I paid off a debt, I said. She nodded once, the way she nodded when something was correct and didn't need elaboration. We sat there for a while in the small office while the last of the dinner service wound down around us. Through the wall, I could hear dishes being cleared, the hiss of the industrial dishwasher, someone calling out they were breaking down the grill. The sounds of a kitchen at the end of the night. Sounds I had memorized without meaning to, the way you memorize the sounds of a place that belongs to you. After a while, Margaret closed her laptop. You built something real here, Claire. That's not nothing. I know, I said. That's kind of the whole point. She smiled at that. Small, the kind she gave when something was correct. She left through the back the way she came. I heard her say something quiet to one of my line cooks on her way out. I heard him laugh. Eventually, Sandra knocked on the doorframe. They're gone. The officer showed up and they left without any trouble. She hesitated. Are you okay? I'm excellent, I said, and I meant it. She studied me for a moment. Sandra had been with me since the 2nd month we were open. She had a way of reading the kitchen and the room simultaneously that I had never seen in anyone else. You've been carrying something for a long time, she said. It wasn't a question. Since I was 19, I said. She nodded. She didn't ask anything else. She understood that some weights, once put down, don't need to be examined out loud. You just put them down and keep moving. Do you want me to lock up? Give me 20 minutes. She went back out to the floor. I walked through the kitchen one last time. The line was clean, the way a good kitchen always ends the night. One of my line cooks was sweeping the prep area with the quiet focus of someone who takes their work seriously. He was 22 years old and reminded me of myself at that age, before I knew what I was building toward. "Good night," I said. He looked up. "Good service tonight, chef." "Yes," I said. It was. 6 weeks later, Margaret filed the lien. The court processed it without incident, the way legal things do when they are precise and properly built on documentation that nobody thought to gather until it was needed. Kevin set up automatic payments in February. Small ones. Manageable. He never called to argue. He just paid. The way you pay a bill you know is legitimate even if it arrived in a way you didn't anticipate. I thought about that sometimes. What it meant that he just paid. Maybe it meant that somewhere underneath everything, Kevin knew. He had always known what had been taken from me. And now we had found a way to be honest with each other that didn't require either of us to say a word. It wasn't forgiveness exactly. I don't know if that word applies. It was more like a reckoning. A ledger, finally, properly balanced. My father called once, about 3 weeks later, from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. He talked for 4 minutes about fairness and family and legacy. I listened to it twice. I sat in my car in the parking lot behind the restaurant on a Tuesday morning before the delivery trucks arrived. And I listened to 4 minutes of his voice. And I thought about the 19-year-old me finding a number on a credit report late at night. And the 22-year-old me calculating how many more months until it was paid off. And the 26-year-old me standing in this same parking lot for the first time, looking at a former hardware store with afternoon light coming through the west windows, thinking, yes, this is the one, this is where it starts. Then I deleted the voicemail. My mother texted once, 4 words, "I hope you're happy." I looked at it for a long time. I understood what she meant by it. She meant it as an accusation dressed in the language of a wish. I typed back 2 words. I meant both of them, not as a retort, not as a performance, just as a true statement about the present moment, which was something I had not always been able to make. I blocked the number. Then I went inside, put on my apron, and started prep. The restaurant had its best quarter in April. I hired 2 new line cooks and extended our hours on weekends. The reclaimed wood on the walls had aged to the exact shade I had imagined when I first sketched the room on a cocktail napkin at 2 in the morning. Working a double shift at 22 years old, and certain of nothing except the shape of what I was building toward. I still had that napkin. Top drawer of my desk, folded into quarters, the ink smudged from a spilled coffee. You could barely make out the original sketch anymore. Just the faint impression of a room, a bar, some tables, the suggestion of a skyline through a window. I had built exactly what I drew. That almost never happened. Most things don't come out the way you sketch them. The distance between a plan and a result is always longer and stranger and more expensive than you anticipated. And that was not a reason to stop drawing. Sandra knocked on the office door on a Wednesday afternoon in late April. Lunch reservation list in hand, and a look on her face that meant good news. "Full house tonight," she said. "And we just got a call back from that food writer at Nashville Life. She wants to do a feature." I looked up from the invoice I was reviewing. "Tell her yes," I said. Sandra smiled and went back out to the floor. Through the open doorway, I could hear the sounds of the restaurant coming to life. The clink of glasses being polished. A burner igniting in the kitchen. The front door opening to let in the warm April air. I went back to my invoice. I was exactly where I was supposed to be, and it had cost exactly what it cost, and it was worth it.